Hey guys, Doug here. Before we get going on this episode on 1993's Doom, which I'm really excited for you to hear, wanted to do a little bit of admin stuff. At the end of this episode, you'll hear me talk about upcoming episodes, which include, I believe, Muppet Treasure Island and Tim Burton's Batman. I'm putting those on ice for right now. They've been recorded. They're wonderful episodes. I can't wait for you to hear them, but they are covering what is considered struck content for purposes of the writers and SAG-AFTRA strike. Now, the second that strike is over, I will bring them out of the vault for you to hear. But for now, we want to be in solidarity with the creative folks that we celebrate on this show. Just seemed like the right thing to do. So for now, I'll be shifting the focus of the show a little bit to cover things that don't fall into that category. So more episodes about music and video games and maybe books and other things for now, which is fine because we got some great stuff coming up for you. Also want to let you know that I just recently recorded an episode of a wonderful podcast called Screen Snark with our friend Matt Storm, a.k.a. Matt Stormageddon, who was on our Chrono Trigger episode. So look for that. I believe that's coming out this week. And also next month, I will be on an episode of Tales from the Backlog with our friend Dave Jackson from our Pokemon episode covering The Secret of Monkey Island. So look for that stuff. Anyway, just wanted to get those announcements in up top and enjoy killing some demons on this episode all about Doom. Hello, and welcome to Nostalgia Arcana. I'm your host, Doug Leaf. Each episode of this podcast, we'll look back on the movies, TV, games, people, and phenomena that we still love talking about all these years later, and ask ourselves why these bits of pop culture still enchant us today. This week, we'll be revisiting modern gamers will be very familiar with the term FPS. That's first-person shooter. It is one of the most popular game types around. So if phrases like Call of Duty sound familiar, even to you non-gamers, that's what we're talking about today. Our subject, Doom, released for the PC in 1993, transformed what was a novelty into a video game staple and completely redefined what it means to inhabit a first-person world in a game and the relationship that a game will have with its players in terms of the ability of players to not only get in and play, but make their own fun. And we'll talk about that a little more in detail as we go. So I'm really excited to talk about Doom. It was a pleasure to revisit it, to get ready for this, because I think the game still holds up pretty darn well for something from 30 years ago. So with me, of course, I'm not doing it alone. I have a second player with me. He has been on our podcast many times before, so you'll know his voice from talking about Simon's Quest and Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and so many more. Most recently, Terminator 2. Please welcome back to the podcast, Rich Baker.
Thanks as always for having me, Doug. I'm very excited about the topic.
This was your topic, and I want to hear your nostalgic memories of Doom.
So, when I was a kid, I did play a lot of games on the PC, but it was mostly like King's Quest games and things like that. You know, nothing that really felt like a video game in the same way that my Nintendo games felt like an actiony, moving kind of game. And I remember my brother somehow got the original Doom when it came out. They had a free first level that you could just download, and somehow he got that. And I was playing this game, we're playing it together. He's 14 years older than me. And I was just immediately hooked. It was like, this is as fun or more fun than any of the games on my Nintendo. And it was fast moving. And it was I would play it at night. It would scare me. And then, of course, had to buy the whole thing. And then eventually Doom 2 came out. And it was all on floppy disks back in the day. And it was just, it was definitely it was a game changer for the industry, but definitely for 12-year-old me. This was eye-opening.
Yeah, this thing was everywhere. I don't even remember buying it, but I'm sure I had it. And I think just about everybody I knew somehow got their hands on a copy. Yeah. Because the creators, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, but basically, I don't think the creators cared too much about piracy. They wanted this stuff out there. They were hackers themselves to a degree.
Yeah.
So this birthed kind of the phenomenon known as shareware to a large degree. And so everyone I knew was playing it. Everybody had it. And you're right. It's kinetic and frenetic in a way that most games of this era were not.
Yeah.
And it was in 3D, which in 1993 was a big deal.
Yeah.
Like, virtually every video game was in 2D because the hardware didn't generally exist to do much in 3D. You think about like Star Fox for the Super Nintendo, and like it's very rudimentary and it runs like molasses. It like chugs, and that game is fun, but like that is pushing this poor little 16-bit hardware beyond what it could do. And so to have something that was this smooth, and we'll talk about the smoothness actually because that's a big deal, but it runs smooth as silk.
Yeah.
And on the kind of PCs you would have at home in 1993, and it made you feel like I'm really zipping through this demonic world, as primitive as this 3D was.
Yeah, I mean, back at that time, it was, the graphics were just as good as anything that was out there. I compare it. We talked about Street Fighter 2 on a previous episode. Like, to me, that was like the game to beat for me at that point in my life was Street Fighter 2, and so this game was like, it moved fast. It had cool sound effects, the graphics, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and for anyone who hasn't played it, you move through a labyrinth, again, in first person. You're looking out of the main character's eyes. These labyrinths that are on Mars and then later in Hell. Because the premise of the game, which is extremely simple, is you're a space marine on a Martian colony where science has opened a portal to hell, and now monsters are running everywhere, and your job is to go shoot all the monsters. That's pretty much it in terms of plot. Like, we're not going to be spending a lot of time delving into the deep story on this game like we did in some of our other previous episodes about more plot-based games.
Yeah.
That's not what we're here for. This game no one's coming to Doom for the story. They're coming to Doom because, to the extent there is a story, it's the one that's just told through the action that you experience. And we should probably talk about kind of where this came from before and the history of id Software, who is the developer. So the first question, of course, did you play any of Wolfenstein?
I never even heard of Wolfenstein until well after Doom came out, so I know that it was a hit to some extent, but it did not get to me.
I did play it. So Wolfenstein 3D was this team. This team worked for a company called Apogee Software, which, as far as I know, put out nothing but garbage. And they worked on this game called Commander Keen and got disillusioned. They said, we're going to make our own thing. And so they created this game called Wolfenstein 3D, which is you moving through a three-dimensional castle, but 3D in quotation marks, because there's no elevation in Wolfenstein 3D. Everything is, the whole thing is a one-story house. One-story maze that you move through, and you shoot it's in World War II, and you play B.J. Blazkowicz and shoot a bunch of Nazis in this thing. And it felt, this is why I said this started as a novelty, because the first time I played that, I had never played anything like it, and it was really cool. Did you ever get around to playing it?
I did play it eventually, afterwards, and it's one of those things where it's like glad it existed, but Doom really took it to the next level. But it was, I think universally everyone considers Wolfenstein 3D to be the first-person shooter game, so it's mad respect.
Yeah, if not the first, then it's always dangerous to say first on a podcast because someone's going to write and go, well, technically. But, this is the first one to really achieve, serious success, and, people were aware of it. Like I said, lots of people were playing this one. And Doom is kind of the next logical step because, as I said, Wolfenstein is a one-story house. Doom brought in elevation. Its levels have changes in height that affect the gameplay as you wind your way around stairs and secret elevators and things to get to places. That, in and of itself, felt like a big leap forward in innovation in 1993.
Yeah. So I was watching this on some of the videos. They were talking about how like there was elevation, but the game was still kind of technically 2D in a way. And so like if that's why when you would shoot at an enemy who was at a higher elevation with you, if you shot straight, it would still hit them.
Yeah, well, in fact, you actually can't look up and down.
Yeah.
Your view is always straight ahead, parallel to the ground.
Yeah.
And so if there's an enemy that's on a ledge above you, obviously in later first-person shooters, you would be able to look in 360 degrees, and you would look up at that thing, and you'd have to specifically shoot at it in its direction. Here, if there's an enemy on a higher ledge, then you still, as long as your targeting reticle is in the same vertical plane, you fire a bullet, the bullet will hit the thing. It just does the aiming for you, which is something you exploit as you play the game as well.
Yeah, it really, you didn't have to be an expert gamer or spend a ton of hours on Doom to be good at it. They was really good about just like making it to where you could just run and shoot, run and shoot, run and shoot.
The other thing that you did touch on is it's not actually in 3D on the map. What I mean by, obviously the environment looks 3D as you move through it, but they didn't have the technology to have, like, let's say you have a tunnel go under another floor where people would be walking. You could create a tunnel through an object as long as there was nothing to stand on above it. But every single horizontal surface in the game could not be above another horizontal surface you could walk on. Like it would have to work as a top-down 2-dimensional map. So there's a whole lot of spit and dental floss and duct tape to try and make you feel as if that's not happening. The levels feel like you could design just about anything, even though the software is restrictive in that way.
Yeah, I think they call it ray casting, to where it's it's just rendering what you're looking at, so it doesn't have to keep the whole map. It's like just rendering in real time kind of thing.
Yeah, and I'm not well versed in the technical stuff of how this is actually put together. I just kind of know that these are some of the limitations they had, and again, the clever ways they had to work around their own limitations to create what would be Doom. As we said, the mostly what you're fighting are some humanoid enemies and then mostly demons. They're really fun enemy designs.
Yeah, no, they made art. I think that's one thing that Doom really encapsulates that a lot of other games kind of were inspired by, is that all their enemies are just these beautiful, macabre, fun-looking creatures that are coming at you with cool sound effects.
Yeah, they're very 80s horror. You could imagine these things being made, by the masters of behind that big skull thing in Poltergeist, comes to mind, right? Stuff like that would be totally practical, like Stan Winston creations. That's kind of what they look like, even though obviously they're pixelated cartoons. That's the vibe you get. Yeah.
They did base them on actual they did make 3D models of them before they put them in the thing, though, and those models, obviously the graphics could only make them look so detailed, but they're really beautiful.
Yeah, and within the game, they are not 3D models. They're picture the things from a shooting gallery. They look flat no matter what angle you're looking at them from. They have there's basically a front, a side, and a back, depending on how you're looking at them, and that's it. They don't rotate in 3D space, but they're very evocative. Do you have one that's your favorite?
I don't know the names. The big eye thing always kind of looks pretty cool.
I believe that's called a cacodemon.
Nice.
That thing. I'm sure I can pull up the Doom bestiary here and find it, but it's like a beholder from Dungeons and Dragons. If you've ever seen that, it's an enormous spherical creature that floats around and has one big eyeball and one big mouth, kind of like the things from Critters almost, except cyclopic.
Yeah. It reminded me of Mad Balls. I remember.
Yes. You should explain to the audience what Mad Balls are.
Mad Balls was a phenomenon in the 80s, late 70s and 80s, I think. That it was just they were like balls, but they were characters, and some of them were kind of gross and macabre and weird. And one of them was just an eyeball, and they were just toys, you know.
It was just like what if I had like a softball, but instead it was like a weird little, succubus looking thing, creature from Mars. Those are cool. I like what they call the pinkies, which is what's actually on your Zoom call behind you. Where they're like these kind of imagine like a pink bulldog on two legs.
Yeah.
With like instead of four legs, it has like big arms that punch.
Yeah, and the arms are above its head.
Yeah, they're all real goofy.
Yeah.
That's what I mean by like that '80s Stan Winston horror stuff. Like they're very odd in a way that's like. Just sort of like it makes them more charming than scary, even though like they do look like they're from like an Iron Maiden album cover.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and Doom is so metal, as far as video games are concerned.
I mean, the soundtrack alone is literally metal. It's like the first thing you hear is just like a heavy bass line, and then just dun 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 like through the whole game. You'll be hearing the score, of course, throughout this episode here and there, and. It just, it sounds like 80s butt rock, sort of.
Hadn't heard that term before.
Oh, you never heard butt rock before?
Butt rock? No.
Yeah, it's like AC/DC, kind of, some real, like, just kind of grungy power chords.
Yeah.
That's butt rock.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, and you play as Doom Guy. Like, they don't even give you a name. You're Doom Guy.
Yeah. You're just some guy. Some randomly Space Marine.
Yeah. And I love how they used him in that you don't really see him except his face is right in the bottom middle of the screen where they have your HUD, your heads-up display. And so you have like your health, your how much armor you have left,
your ammo,
points and other things, ammo, and then you've got this face that looks worse and worse as your health goes down.
Yeah, it gets all bloody and bruised, and Now again, they had that in Wolfenstein, or they had a face at least in Wolfenstein, but I don't know if it got bruised or whatever. But I hadn't played it, so that was all, again, brand new to me. I was like, oh, this is so cool.
Yeah, again, it kind of, there's a moment, if you ever played Metroid Prime, which is a much later first-person shooter version of Metroid, but like the ads, it's this is like at least, 10 years later that game came out. But like you're on an alien planet, and you're wearing a space helmet kind of thing, and if like a flash goes off, you'll momentarily see like your eyes and the bridge of your nose reflected in the mask, or if you look up and it's raining, the raindrops hit the visor.
Nice.
There's something that makes you feel a little bit like, there's a person inside this helmet, like I'm playing this game, and this is the much more primitive version of something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Can we talk about the weapons?
Yes, please.
They, especially for that time, the idea of having multiple weapons, like we did Castlevania, your weapon is a whip, and then you get a secondary weapon that you can choose out. But like in this game, you had a pistol, you had a plasma rifle, you had, of course, the chainsaw, which is, so iconic. And then the BFG 9000.
Which stands for?
Big fucking gun.
That's right. Big fucking gun. You don't have all these weapons, of course, at the start. You basically have your fist and a pistol.
Yeah.
And you would pick these up in the environment and build your arsenal as you go. And a lot of these things would be in secret places. And we should talk about like the structure of these levels, because they're basically little labyrinths. They're not terribly like maze-like and confusing, but they're just these little like series of hallways and platforms and stuff. And as you would go through these levels, quite often there would be a colored key that would open a colored door. So part of your your loop is like, I got to find the blue, yellow, and red keys to open up all the doors. So I can scour this place, kill all the enemies, find all the stuff that's lying around before eventually I find the door that says exit on it.
Yeah.
But while you're in there, and as you'll see when you complete a level, you'll get like the stats of like, how much stuff you collected, how many enemies you killed, and then a third one that says secrets.
I know there were secret like things that you would open up and like a panel would go away and things like that.
Yeah, I mean that's what they would do, right? Like there'd be places in the wall where like maybe there's a switch, or maybe there's just a door there that looks like everything else.
Yeah.
And so if you happen to go up to it and press the interact key, what looks like just a flat wall goes and opens up, and now there's a doorway to somewhere interesting. And they would tease you with these things sometimes, because you would walk into a level and there'd be like a window or a grate, and you could see like there's stuff in there.
Yeah.
And you're sitting scratching your head going, how do I get in there? That's their developer's way of letting you know, like, somewhere there's a door that leads to that spot.
Yeah, and it was, because it was a lot of run and gun, but, you could really explore the levels and kind of, you had to some extent to figure out how to get out of them. But there was a lot of little Easter eggs and secrets around there that you could spend your time with.
Yeah, every level is, like, dense with this stuff. So if you want, you can... It's funny, when you get to the end, one of the things they give you, like, par for finishing this level, and it's, like, 36 seconds. And you're like... Yeah, I guess technically I can run from the beginning of this level to where the door is in 36 seconds, bypassing everything else. But they want you to sit there and go like, hey, what's around? What if I just poke at the edges of this?
Yeah. Yeah. So it was, an interesting, like juxtaposition of, run around fast as you can, kill everything, but also we've laid out some secrets for you. So, you could choose how you wanted to play the game.
And this is, again, pre-internet, so there's a lot of like, ooh, I want to, talk to some. Did you go over here? Did you notice there? It looks like a wall, but if you're lucky, you'll find where the thing is that goes up, and that's where the stairway is that goes somewhere else. I love that stuff, and it was so much more fun in a way before the internet could just tell you, hey, go to GameFAQs.com and look up where are all the secret things in every level.
Yeah. I don't know how he came across it, but again, my brother somehow found a text file that he shared with me, again, via floppy disk, that had, like, I don't know if it was all of them, it had a lot of, like, secrets just, like, typed out of, like, go to this door, do that, and it was, like, shared, probably on the, super early internet, like, user groups and stuff, but, a lot of people were sharing them, just, like, put it on a floppy disk and let me have it.
Yeah, that to me is one of the great pleasures of this game that holds up the best in 2023 is that feeling of like, modern games would probably do a better job of like signaling, hey, this wall looks different than the other walls around it, right? They don't do any of that here. It's just like, you find it. But they do one thing to make it easier, and that is, we should talk about speed in this game.
Yeah, you can move through it pretty fast. And then I believe, aren't there like some things you can get that make you move even faster?
Well, you have your regular quote-unquote walk speed, which is already like Usain Bolt sprinting, levels. And then you can hold down the run button, because if you weren't going fast enough, now you are like running at 60 miles an hour through these levels. And yeah, I believe there is a power-up you can find that then, like while it's active, you can go even faster than that.
Yeah. This
totally changes up the way a game like this plays.
Oh, yeah, big time. Like, up till now, either you controlled the pace, but you could still only move so fast, or the game told you how fast you were going to go.
And most games, even after this, don't do this, because most first-person shooters now will go for some level of verisimilitude with this. It's like, okay, we don't want, if our video game even if our video game protagonist is like a fantastical creature or a person with superpowers. We don't want them running around this map at breakneck speed, because then they can just run past all the stuff we made. It trivializes killing the enemies. Like, nothing is balanced for that.
Yeah.
Here, everything is balanced around, like, we know the enemies are kind of tough, and these levels are big. You're going to want to explore them. So being able to move at these speeds is the only way you can kind of dodge everything, or at least dodge enough to survive.
Yeah.
Which makes all of the encounters. I mean, I use the word frenetic because I don't have a better word for it. Like, you are just booking it, like, you're strafing sideways. Like, there's no other game that does this, where it's like, yeah, you're the Flash with a gun as you take down these things.
Yeah. Well, and you need to be, because the enemies are coming at you, depending on which part of the game. There's a zillion of them, and you're going to be like, you got to move out of the way and shoot a little, and then run and shoot and run and shoot. Yeah,
and we should say the enemies have the same, what I'll call, hit scanning that you do, which is like, if they're, in front of you and they shoot, that bullet hits.
Yeah.
The only way you can dodge anything that is like, there are some enemies, like these big brown spiky guys, they like throw a fireball at you that moves slow enough that you can dodge that.
Yeah.
But everything else, it's like, if they're shooting, you need to be moving. It's your only hope of avoiding getting shot, especially when there's like all of a sudden like 15 dudes come pouring down a hallway at you.
Yeah.
Now it's like, wee! Turn on the afterburners and zip around.
Yep. And then find the armor and all the bonus healths, because you're gonna go up and down. Like, it's no one. I mean, maybe there's some elite gamers out there, but I mean, you're gonna get hit a lot in this game. Like,
yeah, you are not getting out unscathed. You're gonna take a lot of damage. So sometimes that speed is like, I'm gonna run all the way down to some part of the labyrinth that I've cleared out already, where I know there's a few health pickups waiting for me. Grab all those, then book it back down that hallway to where the enemies are and start shooting again.
Yeah, yeah. Also, we were talking about the enemies and the weapons a lot, but the actual like landscapes, I guess, the hell and the space stuff and everything. Like, it was, still, looking at a still image of it now, I'm like, I don't really remember games having that much of an effect on me as far as the art, the background art, as much.
Yeah, this is definitely the beginning of games starting to kind of evolve in that way of like, we now have the technology to create something that looks a little more evocative, right? In the early 90s than say in the 80s, where there's a handful of, I think, 80s games that do neat stuff with pixels and stuff. Sure. But this is another, like, you look at the like blood red weird sky behind you.
Yeah.
And it's almost, again, to go back to like 80s stuff, but like it's a very like an 80s matte painting in, say, like Conan the Barbarian, like the way the sky looks in that movie.
Yeah.
Or the Neverending Story, right? Stuff like that.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. It really made you, and I remember like playing this game, as a 12-year-old kid on the PC at night, with headphones on, and just like, it scared the shit out of me. Like the atmosphere of the game and the way it looked, the way it sounded, like, it was like legit scary.
Yeah, and the enemies, for like I say, they're not exactly scary. They are a little goofy, but what makes them feel scary is they all take a lot of hits. Like, they're a little bit of like bullet sponges.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're zipping around, moving really fast, but you're gonna have to shoot them a bunch to make these things go away. So there's a lot of this, like, that feeling you get when you look down and there's like a spider on your arm and you're like, get it off me, get it off of me.
Yeah.
There's so much of that, like, it's in the room with me. A hallway or like a wall will open up, and behind it, like, one of these things will start coming out at you in the dark, and like, you got to run, you got to shoot. Like, it's happening fast.
Yeah, it's just constant jump scares. And then, as you make your way through the game, you do get a few new enemies that are like, what the heck is that?
Yeah, there's a few, like, real nasty ones as you get to the end. Like I said, they take so much damage, and they find good ways to vary up the encounters where it's like, okay, some of these early game enemies are not such a big deal on their own, but now that there's a bunch of them, or that they're in combinations with some of these other ones, now that's its own kind of puzzle of like, how am I going to survive this? Who do I shoot at first? And mostly it's a lot of like, like your brain doesn't have the capacity to move as fast as this game wants you to move.
Yeah. We talk about the mods?
Yes, we can talk about mods. So when you get a Doom file, it's a .wad file, WAD, which stands for Where's All the Data? Mm-hmm. And like I said, the developers who made this liked hacking stuff, and they basically made this game to be quote-unquote hacked, which is really not so much hacked, because normally in the old days when you hacked a piece of software, you would be fundamentally changing that software forever. Like, you'd have to reinstall it from scratch to get back to basics. Mm-hmm. That's not what this is. People would be using this software to create their own Doom levels and, like I said, have their own fun. And they still are. These things are still being made by people and traded even for the original Doom and Doom 2.
Yeah. And I was not a computer hacker or anything close to it as a kid, so I had no experience with anything like this. But again, one day my brother comes home and he's like, "You like playing Doom? Try this." And inserted the floppy disks, and I'm playing Doom as Homer Simpson, going around shooting Barney Gumble and Chief Wiggum, and I'm like, it's exactly Doom, except it's different. The characters are different, like instead of health, it's blood alcohol content, it's like instead of a health pack, it's a donut. And I was just like, whoa, I'm playing The Simpsons on Doom.
Yeah, I mean, there are dozens upon dozens of these. I mean, thousands at this point.
Yeah.
Some are more notable than others. But I remember this, too, of like all of a sudden this opened up this possibility space of like, shit, there's infinite Doom. People can make their own forever. I don't recall ever making my own Doom levels. I was not that skilled with this stuff. But I do remember at some point I learned how to like swap out the sound effects at least.
Oh, wow.
So I vaguely remember doing that, of like having some version of Doom where, yeah, it was like Simpsons .wave files instead of other things. I didn't change out all the creatures. I wasn't that savvy, but I think I learned how to do the sound effects. Are there any mods that you were particularly fond of or memorable?
That was the only one that I had any experience with, was the Simpsons one. But I've since watched YouTube videos of other mods, and they've got plenty of fun ones out there. But I mean, just to me, playing The Simpsons was so mind blowing at that time.
The ones that I like there's the ones that I sent you before the podcast. So one of my favorites, which is the stupidest one, is someone replaced every texture in the game, every image, everything, even the blocks of like text, with Tim Allen's headshot. And every sound in the game has been replaced with the sound effect of Tim Allen doing his famous from Home Improvement.
Yeah.
It sounds dumb. It is dumb. It makes me laugh every fucking time.
Yeah.
It's so stupid. Like, you would never you couldn't play this for more than 45 seconds before you would lose your mind.
Yeah, right.
But it is very funny to watch briefly. As just I'll put in a clip of the sound. It's just for a little bit. It's too silly. So there's that one. There's the Seinfeld one.
Yeah, you sent me that too.
Yeah, someone recreated the apartment from Seinfeld and put the characters in it. There's no combat; they just walk around. But like, if you shoot them, then they'll say, you'll hear, "Serenity now," or some other Seinfeldy classic line. Serenity now! Go!
When you control the mail, you control information.
Yeah.
It just became this amazing vehicle for people to use their own creativity, whether for like comedy or for like, no, we're going to actually make a real Doom level for you to play around in.
Yeah, and I'm always fascinated with people who like don't just play the games, but do their own thing with them. Like people who do the Super Mario World, make levels and different things like that. But it's astounding if you just Google Doom mods. Like you can just look at them you can scroll for hours.
Yeah. There's, like I said, there's too many to count at this point. But like that birthed a whole genre too. Like I remember, I think Quake did this, which is a later FPS. You mentioned there's Mario Maker, which that's not like a secret thing. Nintendo created that and sold it and said, "Here, everybody, go make your own Mario levels using all of these tools from different Mario games and new things we added." And people put those online to play, and that's its own form of masochism. If you watch some of those, this very much like there's so many games. Even people who are really good learned how to like crack games that are not meant to do this. So people have made these wild modifications for like Dark Souls and stuff. It's really impressive. I just don't know anything about software engineering, so to me it looks even more like magic. Yeah, but I think it really all goes back to this. I remember so many times sharing WAD files or receiving them online. Well past this game's expiration date. I remember I was in college. People were still sharing these around.
Yeah, and as you said, they're still making them. You sent me the one about where like someone made like a Doom level of like House of Leaves.
My house.
Yeah.
It's House of Leaves, basically. Like, right, like you're moving through this house, and then it changes. Like it's like, wait a minute, that door wasn't there before, and that stairway doesn't go, and it just sort of keeps changing and changing and changing in so many different ways. Remember what I said before about like how you couldn't have platforms above other platforms and stuff like so the work that you would have to go into this to create this illusion with that limitation in place is absolutely staggering. I don't know how they did it. I know that like the WAD file for that is enormous, which is your first clue that like something's up, because the mod just tells you, oh, my friend died, and we had so much good times in his house. I wanted to recreate his house that he grew up in, that we used to play all the time, as a Doom level. Yeah. And you load it, and it takes forever to load because the file itself is actually gigantic. Yeah. And so you're moving through, why is this file so gigantic? It's just like a 2-story house. Like, what's the big deal? And it like I said, it unfolds and unfolds and unfolds. And I don't want to spoil it, but go look up My House Doom WAD. If you want to watch like a masterclass level of like design, of just game design and haunted house design.
If you'd said, hey, do you want to watch a 2-hour YouTube video where someone deep dives into a Doom mod? I'd be like, probably not. But I started watching like first few minutes and I watched the whole thing.
It's crazy how far down the rabbit hole that thing goes.
Yeah, it's intricate.
Yeah. We should mention Doom 2. Of course, Doom 2 is just more Doom 1. Yeah. It's slightly refined, but basically it's more of the same.
Hell on Earth. So they go to Earth.
Hell on Earth.
Yeah.
Which is still a series of hallways and creepy skies and the same demons. We should mention the Cyber Demon, who I believe is the main boss, right? It's sort of like a giant robot minotaur.
Yeah. He's the final boss, right, in Doom 2?
I believe he's the final boss in Doom 1.
Or Doom 1,
Yeah.
It's been a while.
It's just a cool design. Like I said, like picture a minotaur with like metal welded to him.
Oh yeah, like I remember the first time I saw him. Again, just beautiful like comic book, style creatures that they just put a lot into. I think it was the second one that had the spider demon, like the brain and the spider legs.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Well, I mean that's the idea, right? You've opened a portal to hell, and all of this weird stuff is pouring out of it. Again, it's shades of Hellraiser, sort of.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Doom 2, I remember being just as into it as Doom 1. Honestly, because I think it came out within less than a year of Doom 1. And, to me, it all bleeds together in my mind. Like, I can't remember where Doom 1 ends and Doom 2 begins.
Me either. I mean, I remember I bought both of them because they were both on PlayStation recently to get ready for this episode. And they were super cheap. They were like $2 each or something.
Nice.
And yeah, I just popped into it, like I better play a little of Doom 2 just to kind of remember, like, oh yeah, it's the same. It's just more of Doom 1, which that's not a bad thing. This is this is they nailed what they were doing. Like it delivers it perfectly.
And at the time, it was a big hit too because we loved Doom so much, and you could kind of once you got used to it, you could play through it relatively quickly. So when Doom 2 came out, it was a bigger game. It was more of what we wanted. So we ate it up.
Now, did you play Doom 3?
No, I'd kind of stopped playing video games about the time Doom 3 came out, so I didn't play really any of the Dooms past 2.
Yeah, they changed a bit because Doom 3 it came out 10 years after Doom. So Doom 2 is 94, Doom 3 is 2004. And it's much more of what a traditional first-person shooter had become by then. So it lacks for one thing, that zippy movement. They are much more realistic environments with more realistic looking enemies that are fully 3D. What it does have is it's much scarier. It's noted for like it's a use of shadow, so it's very dark in the space station that you're working your way through on Mars, and it makes everything feel real scary, which is good. It's a good game, but it doesn't feel like Doom.
Is it the one where, because I was watching some videos of this, where like you have to have a flashlight but separate if you want to use your gun?
Yes, yeah. I think eventually that was a mod that was patched in where someone said like you can hold a flashlight and a gun at the same time. This is annoying.
Yeah.
And they fixed that. But yes, at first, yeah, that was the darkness was like their big mechanic they were working with, and it's like again, it's a great game. It just doesn't have this feel to it, and that feel is what makes Doom. And so with these later ones, there was Doom 2016, which is Doom 4, but for Doom 2016, and then its follow up Doom Eternal. Those bring back the like manic, hyper violent, wild feeling that is more like the original game in still like a modern 3D shooting environment. So you might find those more compelling.
Yeah, I've seen walkthroughs on both of those. They look good, and I think my nephew would just a shout out to him. He does something I don't even know what it is, but it's like he makes some kind of music that is basically inspired by the Doom Eternal soundtrack. And apparently, there's people out there who are really inspired by that and make music in that vein. So shout out to my nephew who does that.
Yeah, I can't speak to the soundtrack for that game. I've never heard it. I would guess at what it might sound like.
Heavy metal.
Yeah, we're probably a little more industrial stuff now. A little more Trent Reznor in your in flavor.
Yeah.
We also should talk about the movie.
The Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson movie.
Yes.
Yeah. Not a good movie, but it does have one really cool sequence in the movie,
which is all in first person. So that's the part that like everybody remembers, and you don't need to see the movie, but you could certainly find that sequence on YouTube. So
it's worth watching that sequence only. Yeah.
Yeah, you're in first person. He's running around through the station, hitting things with a chainsaw, and like doing all of the Doom stuff. And it's the one part of that game that sort of is like it's really cool, but watching any more than that sequence in that like first person field as a movie would be exhausting.
Right, yeah, and I just remember, it was so laborious to get to that, and when they finally showed that, I was like, at least they gave the fans some fan service, which a lot of video game movies historically don't seem to care about the fans of the game. And
why should we adapt the thing people like?
Right.
Don't give the people what they like and take that away from them.
No, let's make it our idea, which is totally better. But the movie is terrible, but I think if it had better story, that first person part would have really popped even harder, but right now it's just the only salvageable thing from the whole film.
Yeah, it's one of those things that's like, have some popcorn and get ready to feel dumb as you watch it. Yeah. It's the same plot. It's just a space station on Mars. They've accidentally summoned demons. Now we got to kill a bunch of demons. End of movie. But I believe the movie ends the way the original game does, which is like, we kill all the creatures on Mars, but the portal has now unleashed hell on Earth. And I don't know if they made a sequel called Doom, or they made a movie called Doom Annihilation in 2019.
Yeah, I never saw it.
It's a reboot. Stars no one you've ever heard of.
Cool. Well, I probably won't watch it.
Well, if Doom Annihilation is anything like Mortal Kombat Annihilation, it is definitely not worth your time.
Yeah, no kidding, right?
Oof. Kind of one other thing I want to talk about with regards to Doom is the controversy around it. Were you aware of this when it was happening?
You just talking about like the Christian right against like the hell stuff and the violence kind of stuff?
Yeah, this got lumped in with a lot of like, think of like the Satanic Panic in the '80s, all about like Dungeons and Dragons. Like there's there's a sect of like religious people in this country that like there has to be a whipping boy to explain societal ills that's not us. You know, it can't really be that we're bad as a species or we're teaching people bad things. It's the video games that are doing it to our kids.
Yeah, it's Harry Potter.
You know, Harry Potter. Hilarious. They did an about face on that. It was like Harry Potter teaching all our kids to do magic, and that's evil. Wait, she's a bigot who hates LGBTQ? Well, she's all right.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Anyway, but getting back to this, like this game got lumped with a bunch of other like this Mortal Kombat was the same year as this, I believe.
Yeah.
You know, this became like, you know, Joe Lieberman kind of cause celeb. There were a few other games that were lumped in here, but this was the year that like video game violence became like a thing politicians had to talk about.
Yeah. And I mean, to be fair, like, just based on what I've researched about these guys at id Software, like they were the punk rockers of video game makers. Like they were trying to, put a little anarchy in the system. I mean, this game is like hell. It's straight up. It's unapologetically, we've raised the demons from hell. So it's kind of silly to like go, oh, this is bad for our people. It's like it's exactly what it is.
Well, it's also like it's so not to be taken seriously.
Yeah.
That you can't look at this and go like, this is going to teach our kids to worship Satan. You're like, no, it isn't. Nothing about this is going to teach kids to worship Satan. It has the same level of, it's as effective as doing that as like the cover of Meatloaf's "Bat Out of Hell" album.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, it just but this kind of, I almost want to say violence, but here's what I'll say about the violence in it. So like it's not like it's that full of blood and guts. Like when you shoot these pixelated things, they go and then die.
Yeah.
Right. It's not like Mortal Kombat where you're ripping a guy's spine out, and even then, that's pretty silly. I think they're the only thing I might kind of see is like it is in first person, and there is something about like you're not controlling a little like avatar that jumps around and shoots. Like you're running down a hallway like mowing people down with a machine gun. And I feel like there were like I don't know, there were like Law and Order episodes, but they tried to like work this into stuff where it was like, yeah, this guy who went out and like got in the clock tower and shot a bunch of people, well, he liked playing Doom. That's how we're going to convey that like this guy has a screw loose.
Yeah, that must be it. And I mean, if anything, this game, I think it was the chainsaw that probably did it.
Which is straight out of like Army of Darkness too, right? Or Evil Dead 2. I mean, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, right?
Sure.
So this thing is just regurgitating stuff that was already out there. It wasn't. I mean, the enemy designs are new, but I mean the concept of like, I don't know, let's go kill a bunch of demons. I mean, we'd all seen Aliens by this point.
Sure.
Freddy Krueger had gone through at least all 6 movies by this point, if
probably
not 5. Yeah. We've been here, done that. It didn't strike me as being that, I don't know. It didn't have any kind of effect on me playing it to like, feel more into the occult.
No, God, no. No. I mean, any more than like, superhero comics make me want to like douse myself with chemicals or something. It's like, it's just fiction.
Yeah. Well, if you're the kind of person that can't really separate fiction from reality, then I got news for you. It doesn't matter how many books and games you keep away from that person. They'll find one that they glom onto and misinterpret.
Yeah.
So,
but overall, I think that There wasn't a lot of blood and guts in the first couple of Dooms, but I've seen some sequences from like the later, like the two most recent ones, and they get
now now that they have the graphical engine and horsepower to do it, those it's like ripping people's rib cages open and stuff. Like it's real gross.
It's pretty fun.
It is pretty fun. And that's the thing, is like it is all in good fun, as like giddy and gross as it is. But to me, nothing really replaces that joy from the original two of just like sprinting down a hallway.
Yeah.
And because, like I said, even to this day, there's basically no FPSs that you engage with that way.
Yeah.
Have you ever played Dusk?
Nope.
Okay. So we talked about this before on the Simon's Quest episode, where like there are these like throwback games where like, so Shovel Knight is a modern version of like an NES game that kind of brings forward concepts from like DuckTales and Mega Man. And Infernax is one that kind of is like, what if we did Simon's Quest and Zelda 2 but sanded the edges off and made them more fun?
Nice.
Dusk is that for Doom and Quake and like these early first-person shooters. It looks like these do. It's kind of these pixelated labyrinths full of secrets and stuff, and it is awesome. Like this, it feels like the best Doom mods in a way of just like, these people studied at the altar of Doom and made their own, and it is great. So I will highly recommend Dusk to anyone who wants to play it.
Nice. Speaking of other games, we should talk about how Doom was such an impact on the culture that when everyone was like, well, we got to make our first-person shooter games, they were called Doom clones.
Right. It became like, we have to make one of these.
Yeah.
There was a bunch of that. Like that will happen often, I think, in games, and I guess in movies too, and other media. Someone will make something popular, and someone will go, "Oh, we got to get on this gravy train." But it's hard to duplicate this. Like, as much as like people were out making their own WADs to play, like, I mean, I would imagine 90% of them are just amateur, whatever.
Yeah.
It's it's deceptively hard to make something like this that actually plays well and is fun. You got to like really fine tune all of the little bits about it, where everything is hidden, the shape of the level, where the enemies are hidden, what switches you have to turn, what weapons are going to be available to you. Like, all those little considerations add up to a lot.
Yeah. And I think that, games like Half-Life and GoldenEye, like, wouldn't exist if it wasn't. Like, Doom paved the way for those kinds of things to take it and run with it.
Yeah, Half-Life in particular, I think, is probably, and especially Half-Life 2, are some of the finest first-person shooters ever made. But this also gives way to things like Portal.
Absolutely.
Where a first-person mechanic is used for puzzle solving and there's no combat. I would recommend Portal to anybody who can get their hands on it because it's super inventive. Both Portal and Portal 2 are wonderful. Yeah. I would also, you look at something like the Dishonored series, where that is a first-person shooter that also adds in your character having magical powers, so you can like teleport to places. You can, maybe you can cast spells on enemies and things and have them behave a certain way. So it's sometimes about combat, sometimes about stealth, however you want to approach it. But all of these first-person games have borrowed from this. I want to highlight one more. Have you ever played the Stanley Parable? Mm-hmm. The Stanley Parable is a non-combat game. I don't want to say very much about it, because that would spoil the experience. But think a little bit of like the My House thing we talked about earlier. It's a lot about like, there's a lot more to the exploration of this than you think there is. And you can do most of it in like, I don't know, 2.5 hours. It's a short little bite-sized experience. But if you can get your hands on the Stanley Parable, absolutely play it, because it will totally blow your mind in a way that like only a video game could deliver a story this way. You could not do it in any other medium. You couldn't do it in a movie or a book. Like, it just doesn't. You have to play it to experience it. But it's because of games like Doom, again, that this first-person exploration engine exists to do these other kinds of things other than just blood and guts and mayhem.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, sometimes a game comes along and just changes the culture and things, you can trace back so much of what we do even today to that 1993 Doom game.
The way software is distributed, the way it's played, the way people approach being able to alter it, and then the fundamental gameplay of Doom itself. Yeah. It remains fresh. Here we are, the 30th anniversary of the release of this game, and it still felt great to get back into the Doom guy's shoes and shoot around.
Hell
yeah. So we're kind of coming to the end here. So I'll ask you, Rich, what is it you think it is about Doom that has, kept us all kind of enraptured with it 30 years on?
I think you had a bunch of creative people who wanted to make a game that they loved, and they did it. And it was one of those that just happened to catch fire like any good album or movie. And because of the shareability of it, I think that marketing was genius to let people mod their own and share it with people and can hack their own thing. It's like anyone who lived through that time, was our age or maybe even old or whatever, has memories of Doom that like color their childhood. And even if you didn't live in that time, whatever games you like, we can trace back to there probably.
I'm just going to read this from Wikipedia. Because I think this is an extraordinary piece of data about this game.
Yeah.
Quote, it sold an estimated 3.5 million copies by 1999. That's 6 years after launch. Up to 20 million people are estimated to have played it within 2 years of launch. And in late 1995, it was estimated to be installed on more computers worldwide than Microsoft's then new operating system, Windows 95.
Wow.
That is an extraordinary level of market penetration for a single video game.
Yeah.
Even you think of like killer games like, the Super Mario series.
Sure.
Right. These very popular things. This was everywhere. Everyone had to play it. Everyone had to experience this world of like exploring and zipping around in 3D. And as you said, this absolutely, pun intended, this was a game changer. This absolutely revamped the landscape of what video games were, what video games could be, and what video games would be.
Yeah.
And it's hard to think of a single game that had a bigger impact on its industry than this one.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about Street Fighter 2 before, which had a huge impact, and, we've mentioned Super Mario Brothers, but this game belongs in the Mount Rushmore of games of, like, you're going to remember it forever.
Yeah, and even if this particular game doesn't, affect you, if you play video games at all, I'm sure you've played something that owes an enormous debt to Doom.
Truth.
And, so I think that's a good place to leave it. Rich, if people want to find you, where can they find you?
Yeah, if you're interested in improv classes, go to richbakercoaching.com. If you're interested in bringing me to your company, either on Zoom or in person for some team building, use improv for better corporate culture, go to playlikeateam.com.
All right, and to do a little admin on our side, of course, if you like the show, please do drop us a review on iTunes or wherever you found it. That does a lot for increasing the podcast's visibility. Tell a friend, of course. Try and get more people to listen to it if you think it's great. If you have thoughts on our recent episodes, which include, obviously, Doom. Before that was Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and My Cousin Vinny, and before that, Chrono Trigger, another super influential game as we talked about.
Yeah.
Coming up soon, we've got Yu-Gi-Oh! I believe is coming up after this, and Muppet Treasure Island is in the mix. I know we've been talking about doing my wife and some of her friends are big fans of Matchbox 20, so we'll do,
oh wow,
I think we're going to do an episode on them. And a bunch of other stuff is in the mix too, and I know Rich, you and I and Amy have been kicking around doing one of two movies that start with the same four letters.
Yeah.
So I'll just leave it at that, because we haven't selected it yet. And great stuff coming as always. So if you have those thoughts, tweet them to @NostalgianPod on Twitter for as long as we're on Twitter until we figure out something better. And follow us on Instagram @NostalgiaMarkCannon. Especially follow us there because that's where I'm posting bonus stuff for all of these episodes, so look there for that every week. I've also had the pleasure of doing some guest shots, so you can find an episode I did on the Fun and Games podcast. I did an episode there, and in September, not long after this comes out, you will hear me doing an episode of Tales from the Backlog, talking about another very influential game, The Secret of Monkey Island, with our friend Dave Jackson, who was on our Pokemon episode, if you remember that one. So look for those as well. Rich, man, thanks so much for suggesting this and dropping by. It was so good to play Doom again.
Thanks always for having me, Doug.
All right. So until next time, that is one more entry in the Nostalgium Arcade.
What are you looking at? No! Oh, God! Choking on my own rage here. I'm gonna no!
Where's the beef?
Send it this way, boy. No! You'll burn for this.